Good morning, good afternoon. I hope everyone is well, no matter where they are in the room. Oh, and I see we even have little peacemakers joining us this morning. Oh, yay! Wonderful. Well, it's a very timely discussion considering generations to come is going to be really impacted by this discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to first turn it to Ruby to kick us off.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very excited to have all of you. And I'm Ruby. I'm the focal point for peace and security at the UN PCD Youth Project. Thank you so much for joining us today. The event is an online type event on the road to COP16. It's approaching after 2 weeks. So we're very excited to have conversation with you. And hopefully this will be a small preparation for COP16. And of course, this event is with the Network for Religion and Traditional Peacemakers and the United States Institute of Peacemaking. Thank you so much, Paula and Jessica, for working on this event. We're very excited to be working together. And we'll start by a panel, and then hopefully we will have like breakout room where we'll have like discussion. So please stay until the end. Paula, do you want to introduce yourself and the United States?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Ruby. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry that the nanny hasn't arrived yet, so I'm here with baby Emilio. But thank you so much. I'm Paula Porras. I am acting director of the Youth Peace and Security team at the United States Institute of Peace, and we work in the Institute to strengthen youth leaders' capacities on building peace and in their leadership. So we really want to thank you all for being in this space. We really value as well all of the work that you're doing, especially as Jessica mentioned, future generations like this one. I'm really grateful because they are going to be more impacted than we are even. So thank you so much for all of the work. And just a reminder that we need to continue strengthening our, the ties, this community, because this collective resilience depends on our ability as well to come together across divides, across generations, borders, sectors. Like, even if we have different opinions, this is an opportunity as well just to continue building bridges, even if we have differences, just for the sake of a better future and hopefully a better today as well. So thank you so much for being here with us. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Jessica.
And good morning, good afternoon again. So my name is Jessica Rowland. I'm the Senior Inclusion Specialist at the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, calling in from New York. Ruby's actually calling in from COP in Baku right now, so she's at the center of the universe of the discussion. But very pleasure to meet with you all. Just one thing that I want to highlight for those who are joining us for the first time. The network is working with USIP to gather case studies of those working with faith communities in the climate, peace, and security space. We're collecting multimedia stories, whether it be radio, interviews, case study, videos, anything that you've been working on. We have a Google form that I will put in the chat if you're interested in showcasing some of the work that you're doing. So we'll put more about that in the chat. Okay, now that we've started to ground our conversations as a group, I will turn it to our moderator to kick us off with our panel. Ruby, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. You start the panel with our amazing panelists. We have a very diverse panelist today with us. We have Imam Bashir. He is a fellow at Faith for Our Planet, and he's based in Ghana. We have also Amira, who is the project manager of the Second Chance Initiative, who is from Algeria. And also we have Dalia with us, who is also from Venezuela. So I'm very excited for this diverse group. And what we will do is ask one question, and our panelists can tell us more about their experience, perspectives. So we'll start with the first question, which is about what climate issue is creating environmental stress or potential conflict in your community, because we have our panelists come from very different contexts. So we're really interested to know about the environmental stress that it's creating some kinds of conflict in each community, and how do this issue impact young people. Imam Bashir, do you want to start?
Good morning, good afternoon to everybody here. The major climate, issue that my community faces in Ghana today, and anybody who follows the news these days will know it's with illegal mining, small scale illegal mining. Even though it's grown bigger, we have large scale illegal mining. And this has had a great effect on farming lands, where it's so lucrative that cocoa farmers are giving up their lands that they've tilled and nurtured for generations. 30-year-old farmlands and 50-year-old farmlands are being given to these illegal miners for them to just lay the land waste because they're quick in getting gold or dime or whatever they want to do. The other aspect of it also is that it's become so detrimental to our sources of water. The major rivers in Ghana that serve as sources of water for the community have now turned into something else. They're murky, they're bad. People have started developing, serious diseases, due to drinking from those sources of water. But then the major headache for us in this is that the Ghanaian government has been fingered in this problem. Major or high government officials have been caught on video taking bribes to give these people the concessions or the licenses for them to go into the forest to go and do this mining. And a couple of weeks ago, some protesters on the streets were arrested for protesting against illegal mining. So this is the major conflict and climate issue that my country faces at this time, which is illegal mining, and it's painful. It's painful.
Thank you so much for sharing. Like one of the main environmental stressor, which is mining, and thank you for giving us more context about Ghana. Now we will move on to our next panelist. Amira, would you like to share more about the environmental stressor that is contributing to conflict in your community?
Okay, can you all hear me? Yes? Okay, very well. Thank you so much. I think Ruby already introduced me. So my name is Amira Soror and I am from Algeria. And to answer you, Ruby, talking about the climate issue and which kind of environmental stress it's putting in Algeria, I would say basically the desertification and water scarcity. We've noticed in some cities that water problem is getting really a big issue, particularly when it comes to rural areas and mountain areas, which is usually inhabited by indigenous people and minorities, which are, I would say, the indigenous inhabitants of North Africa, the Amazigh people. Its impact is it's really, really big, and it's something we can see on our daily lives and even in bigger cities and nearby cities, which is basically limiting the agricultural productivity, especially that Algeria and especially those places focus on agriculture as a main activity. So the limitation that are put also affect youth, because most of them are working in that field. So they will have to leave their small cities or their original cities to go to other places looking for jobs, and basically looking for jobs in field that they are not really experienced in. So they not only quitting the small cities and quitting the agricultural field, which will put other restraints on what food security can be having as a country. And also, as I said, part of it migrating to urban cities, which causes a big social and economic strain on whether people living in those cities or people quitting their cities. So I would say in Algeria, in a country where 70% of the population is under 35%, and also agriculture that can be up to 50% in some places, to be the first or the number one field that people are working on. So it's creating a huge impact that we can see daily while talking to or just interviewing a sample of young people from the age of, let's say, 25 to 35, where they can tell you how they had to leave their home country or home city, sorry, to go and find a job in the city as a very low paying jobs. Also, talking about the marginalized groups, including women, since women are a big part of those agriculture practices, we see that women, when we have water scarcity, they are tended to move to or walk for hours or longer distances in order to provide the water for either cooking, cleaning, or just watering what's left in their land. So which increases the insecurities that a woman can face during a walking or finding all kind of resources looking for water. So it's not only having this big effect on youth, but also the marginalized groups and the minorities in the community, which are women. So for me, Algeria is trying to get into some fights and implement some policies to help with this, but we still have a very far battle to be in, basically.
Thank you so much, Amira, for your insight, and thank you for talking about how it really impacts people's life in the everyday life, and highlighting women and how they're vulnerable to climate issues. And thank you so much for highlighting the agriculture aspect. We will move now to Dalia.
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be in here participating and share with you some realities that the young people living in Venezuela is facing now. Regarding the question about the climate issue increasing the environmental stress or creating potential conflict in my community are two main situations. First, the unequal access to clean water, and the second one is the increasingly frequent floods. The water scarcity is caused by the overexploitation of resources, but at the same time for the pollution for exploitation of resources. Of course, this creates tensions between the different agricultural sectors, the urban populations, and the rural communities that, of course, need this essential resource. And for young people especially, these have a significant impacts. For example, the lack of clean water affects their health, their education, and future opportunities. For example, in rural communities, usually are the young women the ones that have to look for the clean water. In this sense, they spend hours and hours walking, looking for access to water, and this affect their education and also limitate their time for their own development. About the floods intensified by the deforestation and the poor planned urban development lead to damage of properties, displacement, and of course, increase the different risks in public health, particularly affecting the communities in situations of vulnerability. The floods disrupt the education, creating damage on the schools and the infrastructures. Also creates the displacement of families, increasing the financial strain and making the recovery more difficult. And when we talk about displacement by climate change, usually I need to highlight that the women face displacement in a differentiated way than men. So it's more difficult for young women living this situation. Also, and finally, the floods and all these crises have a psychological effect on the mental health of young people. Most of the time, people lose not only their physical things like the TV or their houses, etc., but also in the worst situation, they lose their loved ones, their families, because of the floods. So this is like the main reason caused a conflict, and also stressing the communities in Venezuela due to the climate crisis.
Thank you so much, Dalia, for highlighting two aspects and two main issues, which are flood and also water security, and also for highlighting, just like Amira did, how women are really vulnerable to these issues and how they're affecting the whole community, causing displacement as well as other issues. So thank you so much. Now we will move on to our second question, which is more focused on youth. So we really want to hear from you. What are the needs of young people to be more impactful, especially when it comes to the climate, peace, and security space? Back to you, Imam Bashir. Would you like to share what are the needs of young people to be more impactful when it comes to climate, peace, and security?
Thank you very much. Even though the question was not clear, but just to add from the first question that the issue of the illegal mining, really affected young people in multiple ways. One of the ways is that a lot of young people are leaving the classrooms, schools to go into the mining areas because it's more lucrative for them. They get more money from that. That affects, the next generation in terms of education. The other thing also has to do with the fact that it affects people's health because of their sources of water. Young people or young peace builders like myself, what we've tried to do at my center, for example, the Al-Islah Center. Al-Islah is an Arabic word that means reconciliation or peace building. What we try to do is we try to go into the mining areas to talk to the miners one-on-one, to educate them on the issues that are going on and for them to understand the gravity of what they're doing. That's one thing. We also have partnership with other faith-based organizations who are a bit bigger than us in terms of reach, in terms of power, in terms of influence, for them to also engage in similar activities. We also visit farming areas because we realize that the illegal mining is not only in the forest reserves, but also in mining, in farming areas. So we go to these farming areas to educate the farmers, try to see if we can get them some subsidies from the government that is going to help them to be able to farm better. Because if they can farm better and get something from their farms, they won't sell those farms to other people for them to mess up the land for us. We're also trying to engage government. As I said earlier on, high-ranking officers in the government have been caught on camera taking bribes to give concessions and give licenses to these illegal mines. So we're trying to engage government to let them understand and let them know what's going on with videos, with pictures, for them to really know. If they do not know, for them to really know what's going on, in our farming areas, in our forest reserves, even natural forest reserves that have been left, for ecological purposes, have been destroyed by some of these, illegal miners. So that's what we're trying to do. The other thing also is that we also want to engage, we're engaging private enterprises to establish businesses in these mining communities. If they establish businesses in the mining communities, the young people will stay in school, and at the same time, they'll get jobs that they're going to get through to be able to serve, to sustain themselves. We also want to see if we can engage foreign actors to provide alternate sources of water to the affected communities, because the rivers have been messed up, and these people, the villages, they go straight to the streams and the rivers to fetch water. That's what they wash with it, that's what they drink, that's what they cook with. So these are some of the actions that we as young peace builders are putting in, and then also trying to get to see how best we can help solve this problem at our level. Even though it's a national issue now, Political parties are talking about it, CSOs are talking about it, faith-based organizations are talking about it, but I've realized that it's been only talk for the past couple of years. No enough action has been taken, because sometimes you go into these mining areas and military men are the ones who are protecting these illegal miners, just helping them to continue the spillage and then the destruction. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for highlighting the role that young people and young peace builders like you are playing through raising awareness, through engaging with the government. And actually, it's my fault, sorry, the question that I asked was supposed to be for the breakout room, but we'll have chance to hear more from you. So please keep it in your mind for everyone else so you can discuss it in the breakout room. But now we will move to our second panelist, which is Amira. Amira, can you please tell us more how are young peace builders in your community contributing to mitigating the impact of climate?
Thank you so much, Ruby, and I agree definitely with everything my fellow moderator or a speaker said before me. Things here in Algeria are a bit similar and also a bit different regarding the issues we're facing. Algeria is definitely, or the young people in Algeria are definitely paying attention to the matter as a Mediterranean country, as a country that is faced by huge heat waves every year and the temperatures that keep rising every summer. It's definitely something that is on the top of the priority of the government. And recently, Algeria actually hosted the Pan-African summit, which gathered African countries, and one of the main topics was climate change and mitigating the challenges and trying to find some solutions that we can implement as Mediterraneans and North Africans and Africans in general. And I would say some of the things that people or young people are doing in Algeria, it's like organizing capacity building workshops. So a lot of young leaders in Algeria are trying to equip themselves and their peers with enough knowledge and skills to try to promote the sustainable development and the climate resilience that we should all be equipped with. We can find a lot of small youth-led organizations that work on a really local level, working with high schools specifically and clubs for high schools to try to talk about the issues that the country is facing. I myself also collaborated with the Higher Council of Youth. It's a consultancy body that works with the resident presidency in Algeria. We had some trainings about drafting policy briefs. There were big attendance from all kind of young people from different backgrounds to try and draft policy briefs that are tailored to the issues we're facing in Algeria. We also have a lot of focus groups that have been done with the Higher Council of Youth. And I myself, as someone who is working on this issue in Algeria, and specifically targeting the indigenous people and marginalized groups such as women and indigenous Amazigh, actually launching my own initiative, which is the African Fellowship, that will be targeting as a first the indigenous Amazigh communities in the mountain areas in Algeria, to try and develop a 6 month fellowship to equip 10 to 15 people with necessary skills for them to try and learn how to preserve what they have already in their communities, and try to learn eco-friendly practices that is tailored to the mountain region. We try to also give them the tools to adapt and to mitigate the effects of the climate change, especially including reforestation and sustainable agriculture, because for the past 4 years, these mountains have been hit by a lot of big wildfires that basically killed most of the plants, most of the agriculture fields, and it's really still having its impact till now. We have seen that the people there adopted more solutions that will actually help them protect those areas from wildfires, such as the constant cleaning of the forests, trying to always be aware of the temperatures and always setting a system or a protection system in case there is a wildfire that can start, and how to just put it down. So definitely, I would see that it's not enough as a priority yet, but definitely there are a lot of efforts both from the government and from the youth-led organizations in Algeria.
Thank you so much, Amira, for sharing with us your own work that you're doing as a young builder, as well as others that are doing. And we look forward to learn more about your own initiative. If you have any link, please feel free to share it. And thank you so much. Now we will move. I see a lot of you are raising your hand. You will have a chance to discuss more, share your perspective in the breakout room. So please keep your ideas and stay with us. We will have the chance to hear from you. And now moving to Dalia, can you please share with us more how young peace builders are contributing in your community to mitigate the impact of climate change? Thank you.
Yes. So first of all, I would like to highlight a few needs that young people, the needs of young people to be more impactful in climate peace and security space. So it's important to highlight that capacity building and training have a significant role on this. Young people need access to education and training on interdisciplinary topics such as climate science, conflict resolution, advocacy, policy making, and others. We need also more inclusion in decision-making spaces, not only as observers. We need to be there as decision makers. Safe spaces and inclusive spaces without any kind of discrimination, harassment, or retaliation are needed to increase the leadership of the young people and also to help them to make hear their voices. We need also access to technology and data. And as I said before, climate issues and the conflicts that came with climate issues increase the psychological damage on mental health. So we need psychosocial support. It's important to start to talk about mental health and the psychological and psychosocial support for young people, for peacemakers, because as peacemaker and at the same time environmentalists, they have to face not only with the conflict, but also with the responsibility and the leadership trying to look for solutions. And finally, of course, young people need access to funding and resources to implement their projects and the amazing solutions that they have to solve the difficult situations. Now, what are young people doing in my community? So there are different activities. By example, about the situation with water scarcity, there is a great initiative that have been developed by young people, focus on training the households to collect rainwater for everyday use, not drinking uses, of course, such as watering plants, flushing toilets, etc. So it's like try to find the resources to different uses at home and how to collect the water from the rain. And also there is a project called Eco School developed by the organization in which one I am as volunteer, Juventud Unida en Acción. With Eco School, we go to different schools training kids, children and young people with ages between 7 and 15 years old about resilience, but also promoting sustainable water management and sustainable lifestyles. About flood and resilience, we are implementing capacity building sessions, especially in the most vulnerable communities, to support them to promote resilience, and especially trying to help them to find different strategies to reduce the damage of the floods or caused by the floods in their communities. So there are different activities of promoting restoration, flood barriers like mangroves and wetlands that absorb the excess of water and of course reduce the flood impacts. So as you can see, we are promoting activities for resilience, but at the same time, capacity building.
Thank you so much, Dalia, for sharing how you are promoting, as you mentioned, capacity building for youth. And also thank you so much for sharing these very interesting initiatives that young people are taking place, that really highlight the initiative you shared, Amira and Imam Bashir, really highlight the power and impact of youth in their own community, especially in the climate, security, and peace space. So thank you so much. We're done with the panel part. I think it was really, thank you so much for the panel, for their rich insight. We really learned about some of the challenges that the panelists, they shared with us, the environmental pressures that their community are facing in different contexts, from Ghana to Algeria to Venezuela. Thank you so much for that. And they also shared with us some initiatives that young peace builders in their community are implementing, as well as their own work. So thank you so much for all your insights, and we also good luck with all the initiatives. And now I know a lot of you were typing in the chat and raising your hand. We will hear from you in the breakout.
Thanks, Ruby. We actually have time for a little bit of a Q&A if there are specific questions here for our speakers. If you can raise your virtual hand. If it's something about your initiative, we'll talk about it in the breakout rooms. But if you have a specific question for one of our speakers, please raise your hand.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm from the other youth constituency, but I am also part as a member of the UNCCD, so I received an invitation about this meeting. But yeah, my question will be, and perhaps my response to the important talking points that has been brought by the speakers. So I think we all know that I think increasing our cohesion and resilience against climate and peace building challenges. I think, of course, social integration as well as meaningful youth engagement on various relevant aspects like human rights, as well as youth advocacy in mobilizing tolerance and harmony, faith-based faith-based climate action. Yeah, that was the term that I want to say. Faith-based climate action is also one of the key aspects in that regard. But however, I just want to ask any speaker about this. Considering that currently, it's a political issue as well, and the governments, when they're trying to implement, or let's say generally design such ambitious policies, they will, of course, it's gonna be a partisan issue. So my point is there any optimistic views from the panel speakers here on how we can on how we as youth can try to ensure that the constituents, that the parliament, that the legislators, that the governments who are working on behalf, who are negotiating the climate policies on behalf of the people, on behalf of us as their constituent, can really have a strong sense of ownership. Yep. I think because ownership is what I'm going to focus on my question here. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Amira or Dalia, do you have a response?
Yeah, I would say it's either way. You come from the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top. And when I talk about this, I talk about our responsibilities as citizens and then as youth to participate in the political scene and in the political field, which basically whether to be active politically or to actually actively vote when there are elections, to be able to be sure that the people who are elected can actually take ownership of their responsibilities and deliver your actual voice when implementing these policies. I'm gonna talk about the scope of Algeria. I would say that depends on which kind of political system you're having, but we have in a parliamentary, presidential parliamentary one. And I would say the way youth can do is to be active in political parties, and definitely to go and vote and try to have debates when there are electoral debates happening, and also drafting policy briefs and targeting the stakeholders with those policy briefs with clear evidence, and the recommendations will definitely help shift the public policies that the country has or the region has. So definitely the responsibility comes within actual being present and negotiating your terms and your voices to be heard within or about the issue you wanna raise your voice about. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Dahlia, any thoughts?
I just want to support what my colleague Amira said before. It is important to participate in the different election processes in your countries and communities, but also I want to highlight that usually we hear that the young people are the future, but we are not only the future, we are the present. So also it is important to participate actively and become into decision makers, not only being there as observers. It is important to join to the political platform and being the decision makers. And once we get there, we need to be focused on our principles, our values, and of course, keep advocating for conflict resolution, peace, and taking care of environment and promoting public policies for resilience, mitigation, but also to reduce the causes of the different environmental issues.
Wonderful. A question in the chat is how can we
Hello.
better engage
Hello,
and
please.
support youth as leaders in peace building initiatives that drive
Please,
climate resilience, and what specific partnerships or resources are needed to make this a reality? Amira or Dahlia,
Yeah.
any thoughts? Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sure. So basically, it's a multi-faced, I would say, approach. We can have different key concepts or components to help us better engage youth. Maybe having some effective and key strategies, different partnerships, providing them with resources and funding, trying to empower them through actually putting some tailored training programs, having it very personalized to the local knowledge, to the local expertise, to the local context, also by encouraging representation and inclusion, because every country, every region has a certain demography that needs to be embraced and encouraged. I mean, my favorite one would be facilitating access to resources and funding. This will, in a way, deliver or give them the possibility to do the change themselves and actually observe the change, because they are the one doing it, and be more motivated and more included in the battle that we are doing. Also, partnership, I would say, partnership is included also in facilitating their access to resources and funding. So their ability to learn from similar experiences from very, very similar regions next to them, or from countries that actually were able to advance their efforts in climate change or peace building. So basically, all these factors, I believe, will definitely help us achieve the purpose of including youth into this battle.
So to better engage and support youth as leaders in peace building, I think that we must to take an holistic approach that combines empowerment, inclusion, and collaboration. We need to empower in young leadership, providing them training or capacity building in different programs in climate adaptation, conflict resolution, advocacy, and leadership. But also this needs to goes in hand with ensuring funding accessibility, creating grants, seed funding, and scholarship, especially for youthless peace building initiatives. We need to foster inclusion, formal youth participation in different mechanisms, promoting diversity, ensuring the inclusion of the marginalized groups, like, by example, indigenous young, youth women, etc. We need to create safe spaces for young people, develop platforms like this one, by example, where young people can openly share their ideas and collaborate without any fear about discrimination or retaliation. We need to build in strategic partnerships with different international organizations, with different youth constituencies, also with local governments and national governments, it is possible. We need to create and strengthening the partnerships between the youth platforms and the civil society in the academia, the scientific sector, the private sector. And finally, it's key to promote the mobilization of resources. We need technical resources, but also support on infrastructure. And as I said before, the psychosocial support is an essential element in this kind of activities. Finally, scaling awareness and recognition is important for young people. So it is important to start to use the storytelling, highlighting the youth-led success stories to inspire others, but also give the recognition to those that have been doing an amazing work, developing different projects in their communities, promoting peace, and also participating as agents of change in their communities.
Wonderful. And I'll also tying back to thinking of all of the responses in the polling about the issue of mental health. So really emphasizing that, Dahlia, that you pointed that out. Last set of questions before we go to the breakout rooms to hear from everybody in the meeting. So it's kind of a two-parter. How can we ensure that youth-led peace-building initiatives are sustainable in the long term? And how can youth-led movements for peace build bridges between communities affected by climate change and foster social cohesion?
I would say always the key is basically to provide accessibility to funding. This is how we can ensure a form of sustainability for any project or any initiatives, especially the ones that tackle the marginalized groups like women, because statistically speaking, they are not the one that are very funded and very sustainable. We can find a lot of emerging or new emerging organizations and initiatives talking about, for example, the intersectionality between gender and climate, and then they will face huge issues. I would also say trying to organize regional conferences to make these people meet and create a network, and then also forming them and giving them a platform where they can train on fundraising, resource allocation, and all this will be one of the approaches that we can take to make these initiatives sustainable and last as much as we can.
I think that to ensure youth-led peace-building initiatives are sustainable, is important to securing multi-year funding. That is something good. Advocate for multi-year funding commitments from donors, international organizations, governments, to support sustainable youth-led initiatives is something that can help to keep the sustainability into the different initiatives. Usually we hear about donors or funding support, but it's a seed fund that only will help the organization or the youth-led initiative for a few months. So it will be good if we can secure multi-year funding, encourage partnership with private sector. Also, it's important. And we need more capacity building for youth-led initiatives, focus on fundraising and how to increase their sustainability. So the last year I have been doing research about this new initiative that is the social entrepreneurship. So social entrepreneurship, it's like an non-governmental organizations that have the focus and the mission in the social activities, but at the same time have the goal to keep the financial sustainability. So for this, we need more capacity building on fundraising and strategies to keep the financial sustainability in our organizations beyond the donors or beyond the international funding support that we can get from different calls. And about the second questions, how can you lead movements for peace, build bridges between the communities? I think that the first thing that we need to do is to stay in a continued dialogue across the communities. So once we decide to work in a community, to develop an initiative in a community, we need to keep our organization and ourselves in constant dialogue with the organization, organize inter-community dialogues led by the youth to address the different problems or issues that the communities are facing. Also, promote different capacity building activities, education and awareness strategies, and strengthening the cultural and historical connections between us and the communities. This is something that I believe that is super, super important. And finally, I believe that the intergenerational cooperation it's important. So we need to start to facilitate intergenerational dialogues where youth can collaborate with elders to combine traditional knowledge with innovative approach to climate adaptation and peace building, and empower young people to act as mediators between the communities. I think this can help, and I hope this answered the question.
Thank you so much, Delia and Amira.
Hi.
We are going to now close the panel and move into our breakout rooms where there will be a facilitator to ask and a note taker to ask 2 questions in each room. So I'm going to open it up now, and then we'll see you in there. All right, welcome back. I hope that it was a productive conversation in all of the rooms, and we're eager to hear the key takeaways from each group. So there were 2 questions that we asked every breakout group. What challenges are young people facing working in the climate, peace, and security space? And what are the needs of young people to be more impactful in the climate, peace, and security space? So I will go first to group 1 with Sarah.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, so we had a very fruitful conversation addressing both questions. For the challenges that young people are facing working in the climate, peace, and security space, first thing that came out was that the complexity of climate change and the climate situation includes that the youth play a very complex role, but it cannot be the youth alone. This was highlighted through multiple times through various participants that collaboration is key and important. And while I think somebody said in the main group, while youth are the future, they are also the present. And so building that collaboration and partnerships. One challenge also that was mentioned was that youth cannot see their visibility. Therefore, they need partnerships with elders for innovation, stronger initiatives, also going back to not having to do this alone. Additionally, some points that are pointed were challenges were discrimination, victimhood, mental health, especially a lack of collaboration with various stakeholders. And then, of course, funding is always a challenge, no matter what space you're in, but financial involvement and more is needed for capacity building. So those were some of the challenges that were highlighted. There are, of course, more, but I'm sure they'll be mentioned by other groups. For what are the needs to make young people more impactful in this space? Adequate capacity building is, of course, huge highlight. Good financing, innovation and ideas, and then collaborations with partnerships. But also one of those being involving government, policymakers especially, for optional buy-in. Capacity building is, again, primary, learn skills, build initiatives, decision-making power to be efficient and to make change, and again, partnerships and network. But also one highlight that was really pointed out, and then we had a longer discussion about it, was the recognition of young people who were involved in this space. So youth don't have a platform, or there's low visibility, excuse me, on what organizations are doing. And then also the local and community level capacity building is needed. Of course, this global scale is appreciated, but having something at a local and community level, you see the recognition, you're more likely to have those stories come out, was really highlighted. And then, of course, digital inclusion that allows youth to organize, advocate, and build their networks. So those were the points really brought out by our group in our discussion. If I've left anything out, please, somebody from my group, feel free to add, but turning it back over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'll go now to group number 2 with Yikwe.
Hi, hi, good evening from Malaysia. Our group basically looks into discussions on specific regions, country, to better understand the problem of some of our friends within the breakout room. So we have some great answers in detail from Nigeria, basically to the first question, and that is intergenerational gap. It was told that there were a lot of initiatives to expand dialogue between women, youth, and government stakeholders, and a lot of great recommendations such as grassroots training, sensitization, advocacy to the youth. Yeah, I mean, basically, the problem is that there is a lot of young people understand climate change much better than climate change policymakers in these countries, and there was serious flood as a result of that. And then dams are, for instance, monitored by the government, the infrastructures, but it lacks presence. And when young people raise awareness about these collapsing dams, the government don't listen. So hence the importance of the challenge of intergenerational gap. And then, and then when floods happen, when things become too late, millions of people have to be climate refugees. And then it was specifically mentioned that the last flood that happened a few months ago, 2 million people were displaced in Nigeria. And we also have sharings from Bangladesh that young people are, it say that young people, indicators are changing, that young people are reluctant to get involved in climate change because there is a clear lack of clear lack of education on climate change. And when it comes to the needs of young people to be more impactful in the climate, peace, and security space, from answers from Nigeria was to address the intergenerational gap, initiatives to expand dialogue between women, youth, government stakeholders, recommendations on grassroots training, and using religious leaders and institutions to expand climate education. It was specifically mentioned that in Nigeria, which is a very religious country, a big part of the population, they trust their religious leaders more than politicians, than schools. And it's better to work with religious leaders who believe in fact-based science to communicate these messages more effectively to the people. These religious leaders can also be trained by NGOs, so they are more knowledgeable on climate change and can better relate to religious teachings to pass on this knowledge to the communities. And then from Bangladesh, it's mentioned that there is a need to train young leaders and volunteers. There is a more overwhelming need to advocate for climate change to be included in formal education. So basically studying about climate change at school. From the age of 10, I think that's what the participants say, when they have a better sense of the world, when students have a better sense of the world. And right now the problem is there is too little formal education. Climate change is only a topic in geography studies. And then all the specific tailor-made, customized climate change leaders training, they are only targeted towards a very small part of the population. And there is no way to guarantee if they will be able to successfully pass on the knowledge to a lot more people. Considering climate change is an existential threat, a lot of people should know more about. So the overwhelming solution for question number 2 is training for youth on a formal education level, although specific trainings of trainers is also valuable. But the school part, through formal education, is more impactful, as everyone who went to school, which is a big part of population, future generation, would at least have some basic understanding of climate change. Yeah, that would be all from.
Thank you. I'm starting to see some synergy points. I know with Ruby at COP right now, they have a faith pavilion for faith actors to actually show how they're working in the climate, peace, and security space. So some good movement there. Group number 3, Lotin.
Yeah, so it was actually interesting and engaging because there was a lot of sharing that I felt was quite heartfelt on the part of youth feeling like they were not included. In my opinion, my interpretation was like there's not as much inclusion, or the youths feel like they're not included in the decision-making process. They have concerns, and in some cases, some members of youth feel like their governments are not as concerned about them as they should. And in some cases, there are issues, but there's no solution. There's nothing being done to, mitigate these issues of climate change. So I just preferred solutions to them, and I let them know about the fact that the UNCCD is organizing the youth forum for this purpose, where we're trying to create youth inclusion, where youths are a part of the decision-making process. Youths play an active role in policy making, and the gap between the members of youth and the members of government is bridged. And the use of social media, I think one of the participants shared efforts being made by the government, but reluctance on the part of the youth to be involved. And I think I suggested that social media could be a really great tool to keep youths informed about the efforts the government is making to address their needs, as well as creating awareness about the youth forum coming up at COP16, letting them know that there is a designated event for the purpose of including youths in a major subject such as COP16, to ensure that youths are no longer being represented by the older generation, but they are representing themselves. They are speaking for themselves. And we have social media handle, social media account, where youth can actually register and become part of the process. They can get daily information about what's going on, because the Conference of Parties is going to have all the high-ranking members of government in attendance. So there's no greater opportunity for youths to be heard than at COP16. So I just thought it's time for us to pay attention to Youth Forum and see how we can get involved, become members of the UNCCD Youth Caucus, so that live events are shared and you can become part of the dialogue and your voice can be heard. And also these concerns are going to be raised during the Youth Forum, and they will be addressed accordingly, and hopefully each one of these needs can be addressed. Also, the Conscious Planet Organization is going to be at the Youth Forum, where we are going to be providing a solution where about soil being the fundamental and foundational cause of climate change, because one of the biggest issues with climate change that we're facing right now is that because the soil does not contain enough organic matter, it is being desertified at an alarming rate. And so we're going to be at COP16 preparing a soil policy handbook that we are hoping governments will adopt and implement to compel farmers to increase soil organic content to the minimum range of 3 to 6%. Also, by implementing this policy, farmers will be compelled to use more intentional agricultural practices, because one leading cause of climate change is that when the soil is tilled with heavy industrial equipment, the topsoil is exposed, and so carbon that is supposed to be absorbed into the soil is exposed into the atmosphere. And this carbon is not supposed to be in the atmosphere, it's supposed to be in the soil. And when this when it is happening indiscriminately across the world, there is so much pollution And all of this comes together to form disasters that are easily preventable. And so for this reason, we are hoping that when these policies can be adopted and implemented across the world, once the issue of soil degradation is addressed, then all other issues of climate change would automatically be mitigated because they are all an outcrop of the issue with the soil. So that was the summary of our session, and I'm hoping that COP16 will be a huge change for us, a huge opportunity for us to effect positive change across the world. Thank you, guys. It was an amazing session.
Some practical ways to get involved and to advance the agenda. And then our final group, Paula and Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. So we talk about different things. We have examples and people coming from different places like Malawi, Pakistan, South Africa. There were some shared concerns. One is, for example, the funding part of how we need to think and continue pushing for restructuring the financing structure, because right now it's very targeted to the for people to get the funding. They need to be these big or international organizations. So that doesn't leave a lot of room for the youth-led organizations that are growing, but they're actually doing a lot of work in their communities. So that lack of funding still is something that it's limiting to youth-led activities. They were mentioning if they really want to advocate to have these intergenerational dialogues, like each one of these activities requires funding. So that's a big one. The other one, we were talking, for example, in Pakistan, a participant mentioned that it's is the 7th in the world to be most prone to climate disaster. So how they're working towards overcoming floods in Pakistan. So one of the things that they mentioned was how we need to consider the post recovery phase of these situations and the rehabilitation of it. And with that was also highlighted the need for that continuing psychosocial support, but also the suggestion was to have more training, online courses for workers that are working especially in this field. There was another point about the access to technology, for example, in Malawi, where technology is really hard. So because they lack the infrastructure, they cannot make visible the work that they're doing. So it's a cycle effect of if you don't get visibility of the work that you're doing, of course, you're not going to get funding. And so it's kind of like a cycle on how we're breaking this. And even thinking about small things as sometimes you need a camera just to capture the work that you're doing so you're able to promote it. So funders really need to be mindful of these different things. Sometimes funders doesn't allow, for example, to buy cameras or, this kind of thing. So even these small things can make a difference. There was another point about how we are working in silos, and we need to the more thinking about holistic. There's this narrative about biodiversity, but there's also climate and peace building, and how the peace building is being a little bit left out sometimes in these conversations. So one participant was mentioned that in the convention that she participated in Cali, there was a lot of side events. There wasn't integrated kind of in as a main theme in this conversations, but it was kind of separated to side events in which a lot of people participated. So that means that there's still there is a need about this, but we need to be more intentional on incorporating peace building in this field. Just to close, another and tied to that, that some of the people, for example, in Kenya, in South Africa, they're working hard as well in incorporating peace building capacity, for example, capacity trainings and through peace clubs with young people. So they're able to work better together. And finally, one participant mentioned the importance of the network and how having these spaces as well can provide kind of a moral boost of the work that they're doing.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paula. Yeah, I mean, I would say while all of the COP kind of events that have been building and the different kind of intersections of how we talk about the climate emergency and its impacts. You know, the peace building part of it's really only been gaining traction in the past couple of years. So I still think that there's a long way to go and a lot to learn, which is why it's so great to be able to bring people together in these spaces and learn from everyone and how you're working and continuing to build out this space. So with that, I just want to give everyone a big thank you for attending the event and participating and giving your thoughts and insights. We will be sharing a readout from this event, including infographics that will be designed to share and promote from this conversation. And be on the lookout. We'll be promoting on social if you want to join the COP conversation.